All right, so now we're going to take a look at one of the problems on resonance. So the first thing I think you want to do here, if you're really new to this, is draw in your hydrogen, so you know where you can and cannot move things. So the first area of interest here that jumps out to me is this carbon right here, which is going to have two hydrogens, because you can see it's only connected to two other atoms, and to complete its octet without putting a charge on it, it needs two more bonds. So another hydrogen is here. Just gonna throw that out there because it's again, it's got two bonds here, or two atoms here that it's connected to, and it has this negative charge, which we'll talk about later. And so the only way to give it a negative charge like that and give it an octet is to have it be connected to three things. So there's a hydrogen here, but it's not as significant. Just one hydrogen here because that completes the four bonds, the tetravalents, and then just one hydrogen here. And then you're good to go. Now we can start. So what it says on the sheet that you need to draw in lone pairs. I accidentally drew in the lone pairs on oxygen without talking about it. But yeah, that has two lone pairs up here, and then there's going to be a lone pair here because that's the only way this thing is going to achieve an octet and have a negative charge. All right, so one thing I was seeing, I guess, when you guys were doing the resonance structures is that you were just kind of moving whatever you wanted to, which is fine. It doesn't really break the rules, but I think the easiest thing to do is to start with this lone pair here, and to move them around the molecule in the best way you can. So we see here with this molecule that you have two double bonds and one lone pair. So the goal here, to keep this really simple and to make sure you don't get confused, is to make sure that every time we move these electrons around, we end up with a structure that has two lone pairs and a double bond every single time. So let's start by moving these lone pairs in between these two carbons, because they can't move here because this one already has an octet, and it would exceed it, and then it would be a disaster, and then like everything we thought we knew about chemistry would be wrong. We're going to move these here, and then to move these here and not exceed the octet on this carbon atom, we're going to move these electrons onto this carbon atom right here. So that's going to look like this. I don't think I'm going to draw on the hydrogens again because I'm way too lazy. But I will draw those lone pairs. Those are important because they'll come into play in the next step. So now we have this. So that's resonance structure number one. This negative charge has basically been moved from here, or the negative charge has been moved from here to here, basically through that transformation. The double bond is in between here. So we still have our two double bonds and our one lone pair with the negative charge on the carbon. So the next transformation we can do, without getting the same thing over again, is move these in between these two carbon atoms, and then to do that without exceeding the octet on this carbon, we move this lone pair onto the oxygen. And that'll give us hopefully my pentagon is not as ugly as the last one. Goodness. All right, there are three lone pairs in that oxygen, which is going to give it a negative charge. I did not plan this very well. All right, so you still have this double bond here. We didn't do anything to it. We moved the lone pair in between these two carbons and moved a lone pair onto this oxygen. So you can see that we still have two double bonds and a negative charge. So just make sure that you are keeping track of all the features of the compound, or the molecular ion, that you started with, and you should be good. Remember that resonance is not a chemical transformation, so that's why you can't break any bonds. This is basically all three of these forms are basically of the exact same molecule. They're just they can't be isolated or anything from solution because the molecule itself is going to exist as a like as a hybrid or an average of all of the possible forms in this molecule. And speaking of all of the possible forms, one thing I saw on Friday was you guys did this transformation. Let's take a look. So starting from the beginning again, we started with this, right? Yes, we started with this. So you guys started moving this pair first. And one way you can do it is you can move it in between this pair and then displace these onto the oxygen like we did before. We move this pair in between here. And so what we're going to get is this. Okay. Like moving stuff around so no one can see it. I hate pentagons and hexagons and drawing. No, I kind of like geometry. Anyway. So you guys drew this, basically. But what you forgot to account for is this transformation basically puts a positive charge here. Because in moving this pair around here, or this pair from here to here, you've taken away electrons from this carbon. Circle. So it becomes positive. And see, now you have more charges to deal with. This structure right here is correct, but it has a lot of charges to deal with. Like if I were walking down the street and I saw this thing coming at me, I would just go home. I'd be like, I don't feel like dealing with today. This is too much stress, etc. So just try not to make these more complicated than you are. So that's why I suggest whenever you draw these structures and you have an anion, go ahead and start by moving the lone pair or moving the negative charge around first, not the electrophilic center between atoms, but the electrophilic center on the atom. Start by moving there, and I think you should make things a lot easier because this is just no fun. So anyway, I hope this helped. Again, let me know if it does by emailing me, or you can yell at me during class for making really long videos that didn't make any sense, and I will find a new way to help you. Anyway, later.